Good morning, Kirthesh.
Hi, Ronald.
We're live in our studio here in Ronald in Randburg, which is just north of Johannesburg. And we are discussing something that comes up very often, and that is the small business and what is utilized for connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that I encountered during the week. We visited a small business, and typically, I mean, I think when you have a small business, you have a limited budget, and when they're starting out, the easiest thing is to get a LTE router, and we went, or the simplest solution that you get advised to put in, and normally it's wireless. So at the location where I went to, what was interesting is they had two routers with LTE dongles attached to each one. Now, number one, they were experiencing connectivity issues. So the one router was used for the voice telephone system, and the second one was used for basic internet and browsing and the rest, emails and everything else. But that was working out to be very unreliable. I think what's happening at the moment with power failures and the fact that the business has grown a bit and there are more users. So you know, they're experiencing problems. What is typically the problem in that sort of a setup when you have a small business and you use LTE? What are the problems?
So we look at why people actually use LTE in the first place. Is LTE is sold as a quick and easy fix. You got a small business, you can walk into a shop, you can buy a router, you can buy dongles, and you would be in business nearly immediately as soon as you can power it up. So LTE does serve that particular purpose, but LTE was more designed for mobile use, for mobile people walking around. It's there to quickly look on your phone, look up some information, do some type of stuff. It's the use case isn't to run a business with multiple people. So the problems that you have with LTE are varied. For an example, if you're in an area that's very busy, so for example, in the middle of Sandton, if you use LTE in the middle of Sandton, you're going to experience a poor performance if you're going to use business applications. You might walk around Sandton shopping center on your smartphone and look at Facebook. But the way Facebook operates and uses data isn't the same as you utilizing on a voice conversation or a video conversation. The thing around LTE is the more and more users you get on a base station, the poorer your experience is going to be with real-time or business applications. So, for example, if you're where we are, further out from Sandton, you've got less people on a base station, your experience with real-time applications might be better. In the middle of Sandton, it might be worse. So that is the first type of problem that you have, is the load on the base station. The second thing is if you're getting a dongle and you're switching it on permanently, it gets hot and it overheats and it starts degrading in performance. Dongles aren't designed to be on permanently. They're meant to be for like laptop use, where you put them in a laptop and you use them occasionally, not permanently. The other thing around when you're utilizing LTE is that LTE isn't as easy to use as what is sold by people in the shops. If you come into your office and you've got a router and you go and put it in a corner somewhere, that corner where you've put your LTE router might not be the best reception for your LTE. The only way you can be permanently sure that you're going to get the best reception is if you put up an external antenna onto the roof, and that external antenna is directed to a base station and you get the best possible reception. But as a small business, you don't necessarily have the ability to do that or the options to do that. So you actually do not always have the best connectivity options when you use LTE. So the best thing to do when you've got a small business is, if you're starting up immediately and you've got no connectivity, LTE is a last resort, and LTE will work if there's nothing else available. But if you're in an area with fiber, it's obviously get fiber. It's going to be the best possible solution that you can get. Secondly, if you don't have fiber, see if you've got fixed wireless options. Now, fixed wireless options are wireless antennas that you put on your roof, and you get typically what's known as a microwave service, and you get very good broadband options in that space that are a lot more reliable than LTE. They also don't give you bull shock. LTE, if you use it aggressively and you have got large data bundles that you're utilizing, you might be in the hole for a large amount of money that you haven't budgeted for.
Mm-hmm.
And that large amount of, if you're a small business and you can't afford those types of bull shocks, you're going to be in for a nasty surprise.
Now what was particularly interesting for me is that small business was actually paying quite a lot for the two connections, and for generally what they were getting. So what was surprising, for exactly the amount they were spending, they could have got a business wireless connection with a better router. And I think the setup where you've suggested, Ronald, if you're buying one of these consumer-based routers with Wi-Fi that's built in, now that's not ideal for a business. What you should have, and this is what I've learned from you, is essentially having your router, having a switch, and then having a Wi-Fi hub in the ceiling. It's much better setup. Now that setup that I'm talking about with the switch and the hub actually is not that expensive and sorts out most of the problems. Now, the site we went to, you were right. The consumer router was in the corner somewhere, and it was also obstructed by metal and other things that could affect the Wi-Fi signal. So I think Wi-Fi needs to be seen as something that you can't expect a router in the corner with the Wi-Fi aerial to be the same as having one that goes through a switch on the roof.
Correct. Yes. So in a lot of businesses, there's often the premise that a person has lots of nooks and crannies. And if you've got like a warehouse or a kitchen or things like that, and you've got your Wi-Fi router on the one end of the building, and you're trying to connect to it from the other side of the building on a commercial grade or not a consumer grade router, you're going to get a very poor Wi-Fi signal. And that Wi-Fi signal has got nothing to do with the signal from that router, be it by LTE, fixed wireless, or fiber.
Yeah.
That Wi-Fi is the poor experience. And most complaints about poor connectivity are related to the Wi-Fi inside the building.
Yeah.
So you need to actually make certain that your Wi-Fi connectivity within the building is of a reasonable grade. So with a small business, if you're in an office, the Wi-Fi solutions that you have that are ceiling mounted are typically the most suitable ones to utilize. Mm-hmm. If you are utilizing one that is consumer grade with bunny ears on a little device that's sitting in the corner, that's typically going to lead to an experience that's not very good.
Now, another interesting thing that emerged is that the actual business owner really didn't know, wasn't advised on how to set up the Wi-Fi and the router and all of that properly. So he was totally unaware, and he actually made a comment saying, "Why didn't anybody tell me this?" Because I think the typical thing is you go into one of the stores, they advise you, and then he says, every time I've complained about his connectivity, he's been told, please install an extender and various other little devices along. Now, when you add the cost of all of that, and it didn't really improve his connectivity. So what he came back and says, well, how come people are not just telling us? So we make an assumption that a small business won't understand or won't afford a proper connection. So I think that assumption is wrong. I think small businesses now are beginning to realize that actually improving their connectivity is vital. So in his case, he's almost willing to look at a proper solution.
So yes, it's extremely frustrating that people in retail shops recommend to customers that they purchase Wi-Fi extenders to make their signal better. It is totally untrue. It is a myth. Wi-Fi extenders are nothing more than a Ponzi scheme. They shouldn't be sold. They make the situation worse, and they actually deteriorate signal. Those little Wi-Fi extenders are not properly designed. and they shouldn't be used by a small business. Lately, in the past year, there have been things called mesh systems that have been available. Now, mesh systems are totally different, and they operate with proper protocols, and mesh systems do work. Wi-Fi extenders do not work. And a small business owner should rather, first of all, if possible, get an Ethernet cable and use an Ethernet cable as first prize. If he's not able to use an Ethernet cable, then he needs to get a ceiling-mounted Wi-Fi access point. If he can't do that for some or other reason, then a mesh system is the next best solution. He should never, ever utilize a consumer-grade Wi-Fi router or install a Wi-Fi extender, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the consumer grade, if you're a small office, one person, and you're the only person using it, it's fine. I think once you begin to grow and you start adding in the other services of VoIP phones, and you start adding in, which does happen with a small business, it will grow and your needs will increase. So in conclusion, I think what we're saying is that small businesses, can afford a business grade solution if they know about it. And that's it for this week.
Thanks.